You guys, I'm not just a regular mum. I'm a cool mum. I feel like these aren't really helping my case, so I'm just going to take them off and let this car do the talking for me. I'm reviewing the Skoda Kodiaq RS. It's a 7-seat SUV that's something of an oxymoron with its powerful engine. It's like storage but make it sexy, 7 seats but make it sporty. Can it pull it off? We're going to find out. But before we do that, do us a solid and like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get more videos of me dancing, obviously. The Kodiaq range recently got a midlife update and the RS received an under-the-bonnet overhaul, swapping its old turbo diesel powertrain for a turbo petrol one. All Kodiaqs now get the same 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, but the RS's is tuned to produce more power and torque than the other two variants. It also means the car can sprint to 100 kilometres almost 2 seconds faster than the regular Kodiaq. Just don't try that on the school run. You'll notice that although this car can fit your whole family and then some, it's actually got a fairly modest footprint and it's only slightly bigger than a Kia Sportage. It's also the fanciest Kodiaq money can buy, and for your extra spend you'll get plenty of sporty exterior details, including this blacked out grille, some RS badging around the car, some chrome tailpipes, but also these 20-inch alloy wheels which have this interesting basket weave detail, and while I can't say I'm a fan, whatever floats your boat. If you like them, you like them. Now, before we get in and I show you the front seat, it's worth calling out Skoda's door edge protectors. They pop out here when you open the door to protect it from hitting up against anything and causing some damage. Great idea in theory. In practice, it often means the doors don't close properly unless you really push them hard. So that can be a little bit annoying, and it certainly proved troublesome during my week with the car. The Kodiaq RS comes with a hands-free power tailgate as standard, and that's really handy when you're juggling school bags, the shopping, kids, the whole lot. It's just really good to not have to fuss with opening and closing a boot. However, in my many years as a car reviewer, I have obviously gained immense wisdom. And one of the things I have learned is how to open a hands-free tailgate with a kick sensor. And it's not to do the kind of slow swipe, it's not to do the multiple kick because that's confusing, and it's not to do the slow-mo kick. You want to do one quick, precise kick right under the center of the tailgate with the key in your hand or on your pocket. So let's see if I can do this and get it in one second. Oh, that felt good. Now, as you can see back here with the third row folded flat, this is actually a really big boot. It's 765 litres, and that's bigger than the new Kia Sorento and the new Toyota Kluger. So that's a huge win for people who need to carry, you know, lots of Bunnings shopping. Now I've taken all my junk out of the boot so I can show you how to raise the third row from the boot. There's lots of ways to get this car into its 7-seat configuration. This is just one of them, but I'll show you how to do it. To begin, you want to make sure that that middle row is pushed forward so you have clearance to pull the back seats up. You can do that by moving it forward from the middle row itself, but you also have pull tabs here to lower those middle seats and move them forward. Now, once you've done that and you've got the right amount of clearance, it's a matter of just pulling on these pull tabs on the back of the seats here. Oh, it does take a little bit of strength, which I am lacking, but this is my daily workout done. Now, as you can see, those are now in place, and if you're wondering where the cargo blind is, it's actually stored under the floor here. It slots in really nicely. There's a special spot for it just above the temporary spare wheel. So I've got all my junk back to show you how it all fits in the back of the car with the third row in play. Please keep in mind this is an edited version of the sheer amount of stuff I usually have in my car, but it's good for an indication of what can fit. So this fold down pram can fit. It does have to go on its side, so you might not be able to fit a full pram in there with a third row in play unless you're really good at Tetris. And then you've still got a little bit of leftover room here for groceries and shopping bags and the like. I'm in the back seat, or the middle row, because there's 2 back seats in this car, and I can say that it's a really comfortable place to be. I'm quite tall, I'm about 178 centimetres, and the seat in my regular driving position, I have plenty of leg and knee room. On top of that, I was in the car yesterday in the back seat with our photographer who's 6'4" driving, and even with the car seat in his regular position, I had heaps of space. Also helps that this sunroof makes everything feel really light and bright and airy, and I've got heaps of headroom as well. A couple of call outs back here that are worth noting. Huge win for parents. When I bought my car, even though it had rear tinting, the sun glare was really bad and I had to go out and buy some sunshades from Bunnings so my little boy didn't get the sun in his eyes. This car has them built in and it's a really clean, easy setup and they stow away really nicely. So thank you, Skoda. They could be a little bit thicker and block out more light, but beggars can't be choosers. So love that. On top of that, kids actually have their own climate controls back here, kids or adults, backseat occupants, so they can turn the temperature up and down, and they also have their own seat heaters, so that's a win for winter. You've also got this big armrest, although the cup holders in it are quite small, so skinny drinks only. And I've got my child seat in here as per usual. There's ISOFIX point and top tether points over the back. And I reckon, even though I don't have a second child seat in here, you could definitely do it with room to spare. Now, anyone buying this car with a family is going to be concerned with safety, as they should be, and I can tell you that the Kodiaq RS gets a 5-star NCAP safety rating, and it was last tested in 2017. And on top of that, you also get the full suite of Skoda safety gear as standard, given it's the top grade Kodiaq. For me, one of the key tests of a 3-row SUV is how easy or hard it is to get into that third row when you've got the school run, you've got traffic coming up behind you, you've got people beeping you. And for the Kodiaq RS, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle of easy and hard. To do it, basically your main point of contact is this lever on the back of the seat here, which both slides the seat forward and folds it down at the same time. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease. Oh, there you go. Then you've got this really narrow passageway in which to get into the seat, which is fine if you're 5 years old, not so great if you're a 30-year-old woman, but I'm going to give it my best shot and see you in the third row. So we couldn't film the process of me getting back here because it was not very graceful, but I made it. And I've got to say, look, it's comfortable for a really short trip and it's great to have. And maybe if I was a child, half my height, this would have some novelty factor. But as an adult, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's great to have this massive window here because it brings a lot of light in and makes you feel a little less claustrophobic. But my head is grazing the roof, so if I was any taller, I'd be right up there. My knees feel like they're at my chin. There are a couple of cup holders and little storage pockets here, but there are no air vents, so you have to rely on just the air vents down there, which probably wouldn't get through to you. And yeah, I don't want to spend too much time in here or any time more than I need to spend in here, and I'd probably use it as a place to store my enemies. All right, we're in the front seat of the Kodiaq RS, and the first thing to call out, in my opinion, is this massive sunroof, which comes as standard on the car. It's awesome. It opens up halfway and it also has a full sun blind, which you can retract and extend with the push of a button. On top of that, you've got heaps of storage. This is a Skoda after all. They're all about practicality and functionality. So you've got lots of little storage spots around the cabin, central glove box here. You've got a wireless phone charging tray that you can slot your phone into here. Door bins, all that kind of thing. This really cool dual glove box, so it opens at the bottom and at the top for extra storage. And just lots of handy knickknacks around the cabin to make you feel nice and comfortable and at home. As a parent, I'm all about hands-free everything. You always have your hands full when you have kids, or if you don't have kids as well. And it's just really nice to have things connect up and do what you want without having to use your hands. So one of the highlights here is the wireless Apple CarPlay. It's worked really well over the course of my loan. It connects up immediately the second I turn the car on, and it stays connected. It's not patchy, it doesn't drop out, and it's just nice not to have a cord on you wherever you go. Another big win on the Kodiaq RS is it comes standard with the park assist function, which is activated by a button down here just below the dashboard, and that actually means that it does all the steering and maneuvering for you. You just control the acceleration and the brake, so it will reverse park for you, it will perpendicular park for you. So if you're in a particularly kind of tricky spot, or if you're not a confident parker, that is such a huge help. As promised, you get this sporty look in the cabin to match the exterior of the car, and I will say one thing. Whilst I'm a Bombers supporter and I love black and red as much as the next person, I'm kind of getting tired of the assertion that sporty naturally equates to black and red. Can we change it up a little bit? Maybe get some of the, golf racing livery, the pale blue and orange, or something a little bit different, reinvent the wheel, but that's an aside. Anyway, these sport bucket seats, they could be more comfortable, I'll be honest with you. They're not uncomfortable, but the bolstering here can feel a little bit narrow, and the way this seat arches forward, if you're like me and you wear your hair in a bun occasionally, you'll find that you're kind of hunching over. So they're not really uncomfortable, but they aren't sort of the squishy, sumptuous seats that I tend to prefer. They do, however, offer seat heating and ventilation, which is such a huge win. And as one of my colleagues likes to point out, you can run both at the same time. So if you're someone who sleeps with the air conditioner on but a doona, you're going to like that. Before we hit the road, we need to talk about something, and that's the fake engine noises in this car. The first time I heard them, I thought they were a little bit cheesy, but then I got to thinking and I realized that actually when I was the mother of a newborn, I wanted my car to be completely silent. But I also know that a lot of people like that sort of fun, poppy exhaust noise, and having a car that's able to do both and you're able to turn it on and off at will is actually kind of genius. And so you do it all by the drive mode button down here. So you can switch between snow mode, eco mode, comfort mode. In comfort mode and eco mode, there is no engine noise. The minute you pop it into normal mode, it gets a little bit louder. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. And then in sport mode, it's got a really hearty growl. My hot tip, however, is to put it into individual drive mode and edit all your settings accordingly. So I've got half of my settings in comfort, half of my settings in sport, so things like steering, I want it to be a little bit sporty, and then I've got the engine noise turned off. So you can really have the best of both worlds, and now that I've spent a bit more time with the car, I actually think the engine noises are really clever, the fake engine noises, because you know what? A car with a really loud exhaust noise is really distracting. I don't want to be looked at 24/7, but occasionally I do want a little bit of attention, so I like to have my cake and eat it too. I'm just pulling out of the car park now. The Kodiaq comes with a really handy overhead view monitor, but as well it has a reverse camera, so it's really easy to park and maneuver. I'm going to pop the car now into just normal mode. So you get a faint engine noise, nothing too intrusive, but it's just kind of a dull roar in the background there. And the one thing I will say about this car is that the ride is really great. It's that Goldilocks style ride. It's sort of not too wafty and marshmallowy and wobbly and top heavy, which I sometimes get in your larger SUV. So it's quite rare for a 7-seat SUV to be so grounded. But on top of that, it's kind of cushioned enough. It feels nice and supple. You feel connected with the road, but all of that harsh edge is taken out of potholes and things like that. So it is really comfortable, and having sat in the back seat, it's really comfortable back there as well. Just at a red light at the moment, but taking off from a standstill, there's a slight lag there, but it's pretty quick to get going. Typically, I find that dual clutch transmissions, if there's one flaw to them, it's that they're a little bit jerky and there is a little bit of a lag from a standstill. That's not the case in this car. The 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission works really smoothly, and it's punchy, but it's not jumpy. And I find there's a really big difference there, because you want punch, you want pep. When you put your foot down, you want it to switch gears quickly and be really responsive, but you don't want to jump forward, especially when you're maneuvering at slower speeds. And that can be something I've found in dual clutch transmissions in the past, and it's not present here, which is great. It's worth noting as well that this car comes with an idle stop system to reduce fuel consumption, and that pairs really nicely as well with the transmission. I actually almost didn't notice that, and I didn't really realize it had one for quite a while. So that's always a good thing when you're talking about idle stops. If you can really tell they're there and you can really sense them, that probably means they're not as well executed as they could be, but this car does a really nice job of that. Now, all Kodiaqs in the range are 4x4 or all-wheel drive, which means that they are capable of sending extra traction to the individual wheels if you need it. They tend to operate mostly in front-wheel drive, but if they do detect some tyre slippage or changing conditions, they can up your traction and make sure you stay firmly planted on the ground. So the Kodiaq has something called progressive steering, which essentially means it does what you need it to do when you need it to do it, and I'll explain on that. What it means is that when you're around town and you're maneuvering, the steering is nice and light, and you can really kind of get into those tight car parks. It's really easy and compliant. At higher speeds, when you're nosing into bends at speed, or you're kind of trying to tackle some winding roads, the car will sense that and it will firm up the steering and make it much more engaging and dynamic. So it requires less input to elicit more response. I was actually really surprised to find out this car had a 12.2 meter turning circle. That's not really big by any standards, but it is bigger than it feels, because I actually found that more often than not, I was able to complete a U-turn where I thought it was going to have to become a 3-point turn, because the steering is so light and responsive, and because the car's footprint isn't actually as big as it probably seems from the inside. It's actually a really great car when you're in tight city streets. It doesn't feel as big or as kind of cumbersome as some larger SUVs do. Now, interestingly, even with the bigger engine, the RS is, according to Skoda, more economical in the fuel consumption department than the other two specification grades. Skoda quotes 7.5 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle for the Kodiaq RS, but during my time with the car, which did skew more urban than extra urban, I did find that I was averaging around 10 litres per 100 kilometres, which isn't terrible for a large SUV, but it's also not great. And then you have to factor in the fact that it requires, at a minimum, 95 premium unleaded, so that is going to add up at the Bowser. Now, I'm around town at the moment, so I've actually popped the car into comfort mode because I don't need those flashy engine noises and I'm fine to fly under the radar. Once I get out on the freeway, I will pop it into sport and see if you can hear that through the camera, but for now, without the engine noises, the Kodiaq is actually a very quiet car to be in. It's a nice little bubble of peace and quiet. You do get a little bit of tyre noise, but no more than usual, and you can kind of really cut out the sounds of the outside world. Obviously, you don't want to cut them out entirely, but it kind of dulls all those annoying noises that get into the cabin. So it's nice and quiet and very comfortable. And visibility in this car is excellent. I do find that Skoda's rear vision mirrors tend to be on the smaller side, so I do sometimes wish that they were a little bit bigger so as to really maximize that field of vision, but I've actually got the third row in place just to see how much it obscures your driving view in the rear there, and it's fine. I think if you did have the headrests up, that might cause you some trouble, but the headrests are currently stowed and I've got a really nice clear view back there. Now, while I'm stuck in traffic here, I can tell you a little bit about the driver setup here in terms of assistance systems. There is no heads-up display, which you do get in a lot of other SUVs in the market, but I'm not finding that I'm missing it because this really crisp digital driver display does the job just fine. There's a really big speedometer right in my field of vision and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. All right, now for the fun part. So I'm on the freeway. Got an 80 kilometer speed limit and I can properly test out sport mode, I feel like. So I'm going to whack it into sport mode. I'm going to stay quiet to see if you can hear any of that fake engine noise. It is kind of fun, I've got to admit. So I kind of wanted you guys to hear it at home. I'm just going to fang it into sport mode now. There we go. I'll put my foot down and see if you can hear the results. Quite impressive. I think it's really growing on me actually. Another thing I'll say is that the infotainment screen in the Kodiaq isn't huge, and a lot of your BMWs and your Mercedes have these sweeping huge screens, and they are awesome and they look fantastic, but this does the job just fine. It's really bright, it's really crisp, the display looks really high res and fantastic. It's functional, it's right accessible in your line of vision. It's kind of all you need, and whilst the other ones kind of have a bit more wow factor than in the Skoda, this does the job just fine and it still has a little bit of premium feel as well. Now I'm going to switch the car over into individual mode, so it's nice and quiet. All the settings are comfort except for, I think, the steering and the drive mode is sport, so it's nice and punchy, but everything else is really cushy, comfy and quiet. So this is probably what I would use if I had my son in the back seat and I wanted to keep the cabin really peaceful but still, not sacrifice that fun behind the wheel feel. One other complaint, I'm really getting nitpicky here, is that the sensitivity of the parking sensors in this car is kind of on the nuts side of the scale. So I've had more than one occasion where I've reverse parked in a parking garage or something similar and thought that I was right up against the wall because the sensors were going ballistic, only to get out and find that I was still about 1.5 meters out. So it is a little bit frustrating. I'd rather be safe than sorry, I will say that. I've hit a fair bit of traffic on my drive, so while I'm stuck at yet another red light, I'll call out two other things I really like in this car, and that is two basic things, the steering wheel and the gear stick. So first of all, the steering wheel is the right medium between that sort of chunky sporty feel, but also the elegant slimline, easy to use around town kind of feel. I also love the gear stick. I find these days that so many cars get the gear stick wrong. It's either too small and fiddly or it's too big and cumbersome. This is right in the middle. It's easy to use, it's small, but it's kind of tactile and feels substantial. And I really enjoy the pairing of them. It makes me, it really adds to my driver experience, to be honest. I've driven so many SUVs in my time, and at a certain point they all start to blend into one. The best bit about the Kodiaq RS, however, is it's memorable and it stands out from the crowd. And while some of its eccentricities might not be to your taste, you can never accuse it of being boring. Around town, it disguises itself very nicely as a functional family SUV. But once you flick it into sport mode, it becomes a really punchy, enjoyable, and sharp daily driver. Now, the big win here is practicality. Those 7 seats are a really nice peace of mind factor. It's got that huge boot, and then some nice luxury inclusions like the sunroof, the heated seats in the front and rear, and the self-park function really help to sweeten that $75,000 deal. However, if you're not too preoccupied with performance, it is worth taking a look at the next grade down, the Sport line, which offers a similar package for substantially less money. It just doesn't have quite as much street cred for the school run. But wait, before you go, Cool Mum is back to ask you to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more new car content. Please, but I'm cool about it. But also please,